Hey, I'm United States Senator Mike Rounds, and this is the Elephant in the Room.
Welcome to the Elephant in the Room. I'm your host, Cyrus Pearson.
I'm your co-host, Sophie Dalkier.
Welcome, Sophie.
Thanks.
Our guest today was Senator Mike Rounds from South Dakota, and a lot of you have been there. We cover how we know that shortly into the podcast.
Oh, do we have a lot of listeners from South Dakota?
Well, we know that a lot of people have been to South Dakota because the amount of money they spend in tourism shocked me.
Of course,
Were you surprised at that?
I was, but also not. I mean, Mount Rushmore has been on my list
But
to
it's that big a
visit.
draw? I mean, it was. It
yeah.
is. It actually is.
Yes.
And there's other things to do. Let's go ahead and hop in. Here is Senator Mike Rounds from South Dakota. Senator, you are an SDSU, South Dakota State University football fan.
I am. I'm a graduate of South Dakota State University. The University of South Dakota is in South Dakota as well at Vermilion, and between the two of them, they're both D1 schools now. And South Dakota State University is still in the middle of the playoffs, ranked number 1 in the nation.
They're killing it.
They are the national champions right now.
Who are you most worried about? Your upcoming game or possibly North Dakota or Montana if it goes to that?
Just worry about anybody getting hurt. We just don't want anybody to get hurt.
Yeah. You do want to see the best team play the best teams.
Absolutely. And look, the Jacks, as we call them, they are a team. This is one of the best teams we've ever seen. And they are really a team. It's not just one or two guys. It's the whole team, and they are committed to repeating. They're working it hard. Had a real tough game this last Saturday, but, man, they're moving ahead. And as we say with the Jackrabbits, fear the years.
Intimidating,
Cute.
Sophie?
Very.
Well, I went to Montana, so I am looking forward to playing you, but we've got to get through North Dakota State first, which has been a juggernaut.
Two really good teams.
Yeah.
I mean, those two are really good teams year in, year out. North Dakota State is the perennial challenger. And what have they won? 9 national championships?
It's up there.
They're tough, but they've driven competition in the upper Midwest, and it's helped all of the other universities with their sports programs to have that kind of a competitor in the region.
Absolutely. Sophie hates when we talk sports because she just doesn't have time to watch it.
I get so lost, but I enjoy hearing about it.
Well,
Everything you said, I'm going to use later on.
Let's talk about some other big numbers. I was actually really surprised to hear this. I looked on the web, and we have numbers, various sources. Years 2022, according to an annual study, visitors to South Dakota spent $4.7 billion. Did you know that, Sophie?
No. Wow.
That sounds like a lot of tourism in South Dakota.
It is. It's our. Well, we've got ag, and then we've got tourism, and then healthcare. But tourism is a huge part. You know, we're proud to have Mount Rushmore right in the western part of the state, about 11 miles away from Crazy Horse. That's where we're carving the entire mountain.
Now, that's
government
been going
funds.
for a while, right?
It's been going since the 1940s.
I don't know what this is.
Yep.
Yeah, can you explain that to Sophie and our listeners who don't know?
A guy by the name of Korjak Shalkowski actually helped on Mount Rushmore. But as they were completing it, Native American leaders, tribal leaders, came to Korjak and said, we want to honor our leaders as well. And they asked him if he would consider carving an entire mountain. And the mountain is about 11 miles from Mount Rushmore. And he decided with the chairman or with the tribal leaders that they would do a Crazy Horse. Crazy Horse was a great warrior and chief among the Native Americans. He was one of the guys that defeated Custer at the last stand. He's well respected, and they're carving the entire mountain. It's all the way around the mountain. His face has now been carved out of the mountain. He's on a horse. The horse's head is now being carved out of the mountain. And his arm is outstretched over the top of the horse's head, pointing towards the southeast. And the quote is, "My land is where my dead lie buried." And that's what he's pointing at. And so what he's really doing is just talking about where his Native American lands were. But it is a work being done by one family, the Jalkowski family.
Wow.
There are no government funds involved. They've been doing it now for almost 70 years or somewhere in that neighborhood. And they continue to do it with only donations. And it has been a phenomenal thing for our state. And I think it's going to be truly one of those things that will be a wonder for the world.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean,
Expected to be finished in 2037, I believe.
Okay.
So you've got some time.
I've got some time. Yes, yes.
Sophie really wants to see.
Well,
Mount
I mean, you can
Rushmore.
still go see. I mean,
Yeah.
so if the face is done and the, you know,
Yeah, there's
you can
plenty.
still
You can
see
see
the
it.
work in progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And matter of fact, even now, a couple of days a year, they actually allow people to walk up on the arm
No.
and look directly into the face. It is phenomenal.
That
And
sounds cool.
It's about 6 times bigger than Mount Rushmore.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's a massive undertaking.
All right,
It is
I'm sold.
really, truly a work of art.
Wow.
Yeah, I definitely want to go back and see that. You have a slogan on your license plate is great. Let me start that
Great
over.
faces, great places.
Thank
South
you for
Dakota.
taking that from me. Explain that.
Great faces, the faces of Mount Rushmore and Crazy Horse. Great places, South Dakota.
And so you have a lot to do there. I mean, Sturgis obviously is something that comes to mind.
Yeah, look,
for people.
that is the mecca for a huge number of bikers from around the world. And for about 2 weeks every summer, first part of August, we have thousands of bikers that make the trek to Sturgis. What goes on in Sturgis stays in Sturgis for the most part. It is a little bit on the risque side at times, but it's also just a celebration of life and celebration of biker life. And these guys are getting older. Guys that started coming there when they're in their teens and their 20s are now in their 60s and 70s, but they still come back to Sturgis. It is a fun time. It's a lot of veterans come, but we've got a lot of campsites out there, a lot of locations that are outside of the town of Sturgis itself as well. But they'll have anywhere from 350 to 600,000 people attend the
wow.
rally every single year. Yeah.
Oh, wow. When does this happen?
First 2 weeks in August is for the most part when most of it happens, and some of them come in just at the beginning of it for the first week in August. Some of them come in as it's ending for the third week in August, but it's really a chance to ride to the Black Hills of South Dakota, and it's made for bikes. It's beautiful winding roads, and the bikers come in and they spend a few days there. They enjoy each other's company. They have a blast. If they want more of the intense stuff, all of the different musical events and so forth that go on, the concerts that go on during that time period, they come during the actual week of the rally. But most of them will come in for part of that week and then just enjoy the Black Hills. They'll travel around throughout the hills into the southern hills to the other communities and so forth. But they'll kind of headquarter around Sturgis.
That sounds beautiful. I mean, just the name Black Hills of South Dakota.
Yeah. I'll just tell you a quick story, and we can cut this if it's really boring. I had a friend, we went to the University of Montana, so we decided to go see Mount Rushmore, and he wanted to become president. I mean, he got straight A's, he never drank, that was his goal. So we get up there, and I'm like, don't look, because you can kind of see it as you're getting up there. We finally get up there. We had like 4 chances to see it, and the fog rolled in, and you couldn't see 5 feet in front of you.
No.
We went to the gift shop, and we took pictures of the postcards.
I've never
we were
been. I'm
there.
dying to go, though.
Yeah,
but
you
I feel
should.
like I'm even more excited to see Crazy Horse now.
Okay, I've got 4 kids.
All right.
And back in the late 1980s, we did the road trip, and we went out to Yellowstone from Pierre, South Dakota, which is where we lived. Took the long trek, take the Suburban, and head on out. Excuse me, and got out there, did the Yellowstone deal. On the way back, we thought, you know what? Let's take the back roads in, and let's go to Mount Rushmore. And we got there in the evening. 4 of my kids, they ranged in age at that time from, Chris was right at about, he would have been about 12. So the oldest was about 12. The youngest, Johnny, was I think real close to between 3 and 4.
Oh, wow.
Pretty young.
Yeah, and he was just rambunctious as heck.
Oh, I bet.
So the older 3 kids in the car, they get there and they could see Mount Rushmore coming from the side and then around to the front. And it's a beautiful evening. They got out, and on the walk up, there's chipmunks along the sidewalks and stuff. And Johnny's chasing chipmunks, and he's just happy to be out of the car. And he's pushing the other kids around and just having what 4-year-olds do. I mean, just bouncing back and forth. The other kids walking up there are about halfway quiet because they can see the faces. We walked on up, and we got into the observation area. And we got there, and about that time, Johnny, who had just been bouncing off stuff, turned around, and he kind of looked out of the corner of his eye, and he caught a sight of the monument, and he stopped in dead track. And he looked at it again He looked at me, he looked back at it again, and then he turns around and looks at me and he says, and he points up at him and he says, "Who are those guys?" And it caught me. What he saw were real people. It wasn't a monument. It was real people. And to this day, I remind individuals, these were real guys. These were real individuals, lots of faults, but they were the people that helped to make America what it is today. And for a little guy to recognize these as guys, who are those guys? I think that's something that we got to remember. They're like us. They had all the faults that we've got. They had all the challenges, but they were fortunate enough to live in this country and to have the one of the greatest jobs in the world, to actually lead this country.
Great story.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Senator. Let's switch gears a little bit. I looked up here, what is the most famous food in South Dakota? You're an expert. According to the internet, I've got one answer. What would you say it is?
Good question. Man, see, for us, it'd be a steak of some sort, or it would be, if it's not a ribeye, we actually cut up steak into cubes, and what do they call them?
Cube steak?
No. They'll cut them up and they'll marinate them, and then put them on
kebab.
Kebabs or shish kebabs, or you're thinking of something different.
Have you ever heard of chislik?
Yeah, chislik.
Is that what
That's
that
what I
is?
was trying to say. Yeah.
Oh, is that what they call it?
No, I was going to ask you what it is. I have no
Chislik
idea
can
what
be-
chislik is.
Chislik is it's small chunks of meat. And
All right.
It can be lamb, but it could be beef, deer. Chislik, same thing. But you'll take a roast and cut it up, or steaks, cut it up, marinate it, and for us, we like it in a spicy Italian dressing.
Yeah.
Bring it on out and throw it on the grill and just let her grill, and they're delicious. You use toothpicks. You don't pick them up individually. So,
Got it.
Yeah.
So it's different from a kebab, right? They're not already on a skewer.
Right.
Okay.
I'm going to say he nailed that answer.
It's good stuff.
Related, I saw an interview somewhere. I don't really understand this. Tiger meat, is that
Oh, yeah.
something?
What the heck is tiger meat?
Oh, it's good stuff.
What is it?
Here, you call it tiger meat, but what it actually is it's sirloin steak that's ground up, and then it's mixed with all sorts of spices and salts. So it's got onions in it, it's got peppers in it, it's got some salts in it, and so forth. But it's not cooked. It is,
Really?
but
Okay.
when you put all those chemicals in there, it basically is the same thing as being cooked. So it's some people say you're eating raw hamburger. It's not raw hamburger. It is literally a steak that is just rare, but it is delicious.
But is it cured?
It's cured.
Okay.
Well, it's cured with the salts and the
Okay.
onions and the peppers that are in it. And you take a cracker and you just
Yeah.
dip it onto it, and just
Like a tartare?
It is. It's
Oh,
a
that sounds
steak tartare.
great.
Yep.
I'm going to have
And
to
it is
experience it in
delicious.
person. This is
I honestly, though, I like the name tiger meat more than steak tartare.
Well, and
It's just more of the earth.
and seriously, I serve it here in the capital to my each of us try to do 1 week out of the year where we provide a meal for our fellow colleagues, and on that particular day I do turkey from the turkey processing plant in South Dakota for Thanksgiving, but then we do always have tiger meat to go with it.
You get a good
some
response?
Some of the guys they hoard it.
Oh,
And
really?
some of the
Love it.
because we'll put it on little plates around for everybody, and some of them that say, well, I'm not going to eat raw meat, and everybody else says, that's okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So when we get all done with it, we normally have I keep some of it back in the office, and I try to get it back to the office so that I get a little bit of it as
Yes.
well. So it is absolutely delicious, and it's even better with a beer.
Senator, you have a lot of accomplishments. I know I'm jumping around here. You are a pilot, and you got your license at what seems to me a very young age.
You can get your private pilot's license at age 17. I got mine on my 17th birthday. Soloed a few days after my 16th birthday, but I've been flying ever since. I've got about 4,000 hours. Still fly back and forth from my home in Fort Pierre, leave Pierre, and fly to Minneapolis, where we pick up a Delta flight into D.C. every week.
You fly yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And when you say Pierre, how is that spelled?
Pierre. So it looks like it's Pierre.
There's all these tricks.
Yeah, but it's
Sounds
actually
French to
Pierre.
me.
It's and it actually comes from. We're on the Missouri River.
Yes.
And right across, it's on the east side of the Missouri River, right exactly in the middle of the state. Right across the river, on the west side is Fort Pierre. Now, I live in Fort Pierre. It's smaller than Pierre, but originally it was Fort Pierre Chateau, which was a fur trading post. It's about 6 blocks from where my home is at.
Wow.
So now here's the story. It used to be the fur traders would go up and down the Missouri River. They would stop at Fort Pierre Chateau. But there was on the other side an Indian village called Matu. It's where the city of Pierre was built. Steamers coming up and down would stop. And on the east side of the river, there were piers where they could pull the steamers into. There was no bridge across.
Yeah.
So some shippers were sending things to the pier across from Fort Pierre. It stuck. It became the city of Pierre and transcended into Pierre and Fort Pierre.
Interesting.
I love etymology, actually. It's a
Yeah.
really weird passion of mine.
Those-
Thank you for that.
Those dang French. Oh,
She's French.
I'm French.
She loves anything French here. Let me ask you, we occasionally send people in our office out, and some went with you, and I don't know if you remember this, but you had an issue with the landing gear coming out?
Oh yeah. Well, we were taking them with us, so we were in a different airplane than what we normally use, and we got down to another community that we were going to land at, and we couldn't get a gear down indication, and so that means you go through a series of processes trying to drop the landing gear. We couldn't get a good, clear indication, and so we flew back to Pierre where we had resources, and we were pretty sure it was down, but just to make sure, we took some extra precautions, just like the book says, and landed it without incident. But it was you just happened to have a camera crew on board while we were doing it. So,
Well, the
yeah.
cameraman said anytime you have to reach for the manual as the pilot, it's never really the best side.
Well,
So-
but that's the way that works, and that's the way that's supposed to work. If you're in what could be an unusual situation, you have certain things that you do by memory, but the rest of it, you go back to the manual, you check the manual, and you just make sure that you're doing it right and that you haven't forgotten anything.
And so you did a little touch and go to make sure your landing gear was down. And
Yep.
Lane said you did not panic at all the entire time. I mean, you
Well,
were
no,
confident the whole time.
you train for it, you work it through, and you're fairly certain that what you're doing, you've done everything to make sure that you think it's down and that you think it's just a light or a switch that's bad, but you want to make sure. So you don't take any chances.
Sure.
So what drew you to flying? Is this a common thing in South Dakota that people just get their pilot's license and fly around? Or
No, but it's one of those things. I can't imagine a time in my life when I didn't want to fly.
Wow.
Just wanted to fly and wanted to have a tractor.
Yeah.
So I've got a tractor, but I'd love to fly, and I'd originally wanted to get into the Air Force and do that. Things didn't work out for me there, but still fly every week as best I can. Shot instrument approaches into flying cloud this morning to get in and make our trip. So yeah.
That's fascinating.
Let's talk about what made you get into Congress, and maybe the question should be, what made you get into politics?
Well, actually, I was a student at South Dakota State University, and it may sound crazy, but at that time, this was in the 1970s, there were policies on the campuses that we disagreed with. Think about that way, it was a time in which there was a lot of, protests going on and so forth. I'm 18 years old at the time and turning 19, and
Right in the heart of it.
right in the heart of it, you get to campus and there's a ruling that says no beer on campus, and we're going, wait a minute, this is like our place,
Yes.
and so we started working on what we call the Inter Residence Hall Council.
Well, no, the
This-
age limit was different at that time.
Yeah, it was 18.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so we could legally drink beer
Sure.
off campus. We couldn't drink beer in our dorm rooms. So a couple of us got together and we put together a proposal to the Board of Regents and offered a beer on campus policy, which they accepted. And so we wrote the policies, got it into them, and the Board of Regents accepted the proposal, and we had beer on campus after that. But it was
That's amazing.
but it was just a matter that it just looked like people weren't paying attention to what was going on the campuses.
right.
There were rules about when girls could get into their dorms and what would happen if they weren't in on time.
Mm-hmm.
And think about this. The rule was on weeknights that if the girls weren't in by, I believe it was 11 o'clock, they would lock the campus door. They would lock their doors.
Oh my gosh.
Well, gee, what's a girl going to do?
Right.
Didn't take the guys long to figure that out. So, but the question was that a fair thing for girls to
Right.
be locked out? So we proposed that they change that policy and that they allow them to come and go just like the guys could come and go. Because it didn't apply to the guys, it just applied to the girls.
Oh my gosh.
Well, because they had to go back home and tell the parents, we're taking care of your little girls.
Right.
And the group of us just said, that's not right. So we got that policy changed as well. But that kind of stuff got me into the question of politics in general. I interned for the South Dakota legislature, for Republicans in the South Dakota legislature. My junior year, I loved it. Really admired the folks that were there. Found them on both sides of the aisle. They were just really good people. And I stayed friends with a lot of them till this day. And I thought I'd never go into that because of all the work that these guys did on a part-time basis.
Yeah.
But they were full-time. Got into business. Really enjoyed business, but just had this sense that at some point I wanted to be more involved. Ran for the legislature. Ended up serving in the South Dakota legislature for 10 years, 6 as the majority leader. Got out, was going to stay out of it, had done my time, made my commitment, get back into the business world again on a more serious note without being off for basically a quarter of the year. And just couldn't sleep at night looking at running for governor, and had 2 good friends who were actually running for governor. Bill Janklow had been termed out. And I had friends that were running, and I was going to support one of them. And I just couldn't sleep at night. Just couldn't sleep at night. Heck, I went down and told my partner, I said, I've made up my mind. I'm not going to run. I'm going to stay in the business, and we're going to get this thing rolling. And went down to go hunting with a new puppy dog I had. And one of the school principals that I had in high school said, we heard you made your mind up. I said, yeah, I'm not going to run. I'm going to stay in the business. He says, well, I took care of your problem. Now what about the rest of us? Went home and thought, I just couldn't do her.
Yeah.
My dad walked into my office the next day, shut the door, and says, I normally don't tell you what to do, but I think you need to reconsider. I said, Dad, I got 2 good friends running. They've got $4 million between the 2 of them already in the race. They've already got commitments from the guys that I was in the legislature on. It's just, I don't do dumb stuff like that, Dad. I just not ready to go. He said, I think you made a mistake. I think you need to reconsider.
Wow.
I got home miserable, feeling miserable. Couldn't even drink a beer.
Oh.
That is bad.
Got home. Next morning I got up and my wife Jean says, if you're going to be this miserable for the next 6 months, you need to reconsider. So I did. And got into the race, lots of family support. Basically, it was me going to Lincoln Day dinners and my family making signs. We made signs for big yard signs, big farm signs. Had about $5,000 in my campaign account from when I was a senator, and started going to Lincoln Days. And it worked out. We got in, we won the primary, and moved on from there. So it was
Wow.
just a good thing. But
Did it ruin your friendship with the 2 others?
no, in
Good.
fact, I consider them both good friends.
Oh, great.
And they both supported me in my run for governor. They both got out the next day with me and came in. And like I say, good guys. They just got into a battle between the 2 of them, and I was the guy behind door number 3. So it worked out, but it was an interesting campaign.
Wow.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go back to the beer thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the best answers I've ever heard about this. That was your first experience with kind of how things work with electors?
Yeah, I mean, well, it was directly impacting the people that I worked with on a day-to-day basis. I mean, it was it was real life.
If you go back to that time where you didn't have that understanding and you just went into it, did that kind of open your eyes in any way?
No, it was simply something that wasn't right and it needed to be fixed. And and the same thing. I got in. I wasn't planning on running for the United States Senate. In fact, I was perfectly happy. I retired as governor. I was working back in the business again. We had things to do, and then we had a flood on the Missouri River, and my home was flooded. Or it was in the floodplain, just like everybody else's in the Fort Pierre and Pierre side, down by the river. And I watched as our local community leaders did their best to put up berms on an emergency basis. And I watched as Corps officials were in telling them, if you don't do it this way, we're not going to pay. If you don't do it that way, if you don't have the right angle, we're not going to do this. And rather than being helpful, I saw them as being a pain in the ass,
Yeah.
quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not happy about it. And it just so happened that one of the news guys asked me, well, what are you going to do about it? And I basically said, well, somebody needs to provide adult supervision to these folks. Now, look, I respect the Corps of Engineers, but at the time I was really angry with them, and I just felt like we needed to get in and get them talking to community leaders, and rather than looking down a long nose at them, working with them, because all the community leaders wanted to do was to save their communities.
Right.
And it worked out. We saved hundreds of homes on the Pierre and the Fort Pierce side of the river.
Awesome.
But it got me involved enough to where I wanted to come and be a part of actually providing what I called adult supervision in D.C.
It's a good reason. Very good
Yeah.
reason.
People appreciate you and your accomplishments, and we'll get into those maybe after this, unless Sophie wants to take it in a different direction. But I read this, and I know this is random, but it's just stuff that interests me. An operations facility was named for you to honor your leadership in the creation of the Sanford Underground Research Facility.
Oh.
Can you tell us about what that is? It sounds. Is it top
Mysterious.
secret?
It's
secret?
it's not.
Okay.
The Home State Gold Mine
Yeah.
was created back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. By 1925, it was one of the largest employers in South Dakota. It goes down 7,000 foot. There's 310 miles of drifts and what they call drifts, which are the horizontal tunnels and shafts. 310
miles.
miles. Yeah. Like
DC's
a great,
only 10 miles.
like a great big anthill. Okay,
Wow.
it just goes down. But they were chasing gold veins, and they did that until the gold ran out. And in 2001, just before I ran for governor, some of the university folks came in and said, "Look, this is a treasure chest for South Dakota." Barrick Gold Corporation, which is a very responsible mining company, they had bought Homestake, and they were going to just shut it down. And the scientists said, "Look, this is too good of an opportunity to do underground research, specifically with neutrinos." And there had already been neutrino research that had been done there on a voluntary basis with Homestake for years. And in fact, there had actually been a science award for a guy that had found solar neutrinos.
I'm not really familiar with neutrinos.
Neutrinos are probably one of the smallest particles in the universe,
Wow.
but they go through everything.
Oh, okay.
They go
Smaller than
through-
an atom?
Yeah, they're 5 to 6 billion of them pass through your fingertip every second.
Wow.
It's a huge. They're really, really tiny, but they're everywhere.
All right.
But you want to be able to see them. You want to be able to see what they are. There's something there, but it's a really tiny
Yeah.
Particle, yeah.
But they go through everything because they're so small. They don't hit anything, and they want to study them there. So.
Wow,
We
interesting.
we decided that we would try to help on it. When I became governor, we went to work, and we wanted the National Science Foundation to come in. They wanted this as a facility, but they didn't want to operate it. Barrick was willing to work with us, but they wanted a responsible body to come in and do it. And they said, well, if the state did it, you could always renege, and what are we going to do to fight a state? And if you decided you were going to walk away from the contract, we'd be stuck with any damage you did there on an environmental basis. We said, got a point. I said, well, if we were, and we negotiated for an extended period of time with them. Finally, I looked at it, I said, so what would you do if a business wanted it? And they said, well, we'd make them buy, we'd make them guarantee, and we'd expect them to buy insurance. And I said, all right. And I was hoping that was their answer because I'd already checked, and I could buy insurance to do what they needed.
Nice.
But I had to set up a separate entity from the state. So we created a separate authority, they called it, separate from the state, and it could take on liability and it could take on assets. So we proposed that we create an authority and that we fund it, and that authority take possession of the mine and take responsibility for it. And for Barrick, we would provide them with a liability insurance policy, prepaid, that would extend their protection so that just like a business, they would be protected. They accepted our offer, went to the legislature, and basically asked them for $39 million. That was about a quarter of our entire reserve to fund this hole in the ground. And that was flooding at the time.
Oh my
And
gosh.
the legislature, to their credit, we went around the state. We did town hall meetings, and every place that we went, people showed up, and they told the legislators, "This is future. This is for our kids." Came back in 99 to 4.
Wow.
Final vote.
Wow. Got stuff done.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Sophie, I'm just dominating with
No, I
random
love
things
it.
I'm interested in. What do you got?
No, I love it. I absolutely love it. I read that you are quite involved in some other clubs and communities, and this sounds like a really great place to do it. But something else you're passionate about is hunting.
Oh, yeah.
I want to know all about that. What you hunt? Do you eat it?
I was born on the opening weekend of pheasant hunting season, which is like a national holiday in South Dakota. My dad continued to remind me until the day he passed away that I messed up his hunt that year, that I owed him another one. But we love pheasant hunting. It's a part of our tradition in South Dakota. We continue to hunt. My kids hunt. My grandkids hunt. And pheasants is the name of the game. It's the state bird of South Dakota. We shoot it. And we love the tradition around it. So in South Dakota, hunting pheasants is a little bit different than what it may be in other places. We have a good pheasant population. There's hens and there's roosters. You don't shoot the hens; they produce more pheasants for you. But the roosters, you can shoot them all you want because they are aggressive. They're a big bird. They're a beautiful bird. You need about one rooster for every 10 to 12 hens. So you can shoot a lot of roosters and still continue to have a really good pheasant population. But it's a part of our tradition. We hunt it every year. We created it. We bought a farm and we hunt on our farm, and we have lots of people come down and hunt with us every single year.
Wow, that sounds so fun. So, yeah.
Is there some trick to that? Is there a technique that you need to master? You just need to be a good shot.
No, it's.
I don't know anything about pheasant.
A lot of the guys come in. They're used to shooting quail. And dove and so forth, and they're good at it. But pheasants, you hunt as a group, and what you'll do is you'll push them to the end of a field. So you'll have a strip that you'll like corn or milo type stuff, and you'll get in a line, and then you'll send some guys out on either side there that are kind of winging out to the sides, and then you will walk it forward down to the end. Now, at the end of your field that could be anywhere from 300 yards to 450 yards away, you'll have blockers. And the guys that are on the end are the blockers. And the idea is you push these birds that would rather run than fly. You'll push them down to the end, and then at the end you'll have an explosion of birds. Flying.
Wow.
Going in all directions. And your goal is, number one, it's safety. You always have a safety talk. And the rule is you don't shoot low birds because you could hit somebody. You've got guys all the way around. But as the birds get up in the air, then you shoot your birds, and your dogs basically get them in the air, and the dogs go retrieve them for you. And that's some of the best part of pheasant hunting is the dog work.
That sounds so much fun.
The dogs are part of our family out there.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really important to us. So you don't shoot anything on the ground. You let them get up in the air, but you shoot them once they're in the air. We call it the blue sky rule, so that you're not shooting at your blockers and you're not shooting at the wings. So everybody, you got to be safe. You can shoot them outside of the circle that you're forming, but you don't shoot anything in the middle.
But the whole point is that there's a bunch of them in the sky at the same time.
Oh yeah.
That sounds so fun.
You can on a good rooster shoot, you can have 40, 50 birds in the air at one time.
Wow. Because I've done a bunch of clay shooting. And it's hard, and even when you're just focusing on one, but it sounds fun to just kind of, spray where you can.
It's a good way to miss a bird if you're just shooting up in the air.
You're right.
You got to pick out the roosters.
It sounds like I should come practice.
Oh yeah, but it's a spectacular sport.
Amazing. And did your wife hunt with you?
She never enjoyed the hunting part of it, but she always was there because this is a tradition, and you bring people together. People come in from all over the world to hunt. And so you've always got family and friends coming in. It's not like you do it by yourself. You always got folks coming in. So you have, and the Chamber of Commerce a long time ago convinced the legislature not to start hunting until noon, so you could always enjoy the evening before. And you get up, you have a great breakfast, and then the tradition starts at noon. I think we go to 10 o'clock now, but you don't start hunting pheasants until 10 o'clock in the morning. So you relax, you have a good breakfast, you come on out, you walk the fields, but it's friendship. It's camaraderie, and folks that have been coming out for 40 and 50 years. it's a tradition. They bring their families back out for it. So you have chili after you're done, or you have steaks after you're done, or you have pheasant when you're done.
Right.
But it's the social aspect of it, which is also a big part that people come into the state for.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about, we're going to be running into Christmas here. Everybody around here knows you have a huge family, 4 children, 10 grandchildren, a partridge in a pear tree. Stop me when I'm off here.
Well, 10 grandkids and a whisper.
Okay, a whisper.
And a whisper. But yeah, look, I come from a big family myself. I'm the oldest of 11 kids. I've got 2 stepbrothers and a stepsister. So we have a huge family. And my dad was part of a big family of 11. And so there's lots of family in the area. But we have, for as long as I can remember, from even back when I was in junior high, we've always had a Christmas Eve celebration of Christmas. And we're a Catholic family. We go to Mass first at 4 o'clock in the evening on Christmas Eve. And then we all gather together. Either we used to do it at my dad's place when he was alive, but now we do it at our home, at my home. Mm-hmm. And we actually built our home along the Missouri River on the Fort Pierce side, but we did it in such a fashion that we could host family. So the kitchen, living room, dining room are all open.
I love that.
Three-stall garage that I can open up, and and we put tables out there. We put tables in the living room, and we'll have. This year we expect to have about 100 for Christmas Eve at our house. Yeah.
Wow.
People.
Yeah. Serve homemade chicken noodle soup. That's our tradition. 10 chickens this year, and
wow.
They start working on them early. My daughter Carrie and her cousins, they decorate the house for me, and they come in early. I think there's a little bit of white wine that gets drank along the way on that Saturday. But I was home this weekend, and they've got the house decorated. The kids came over and put up my Christmas lights outside. We'll clean it all up good, and then my sister and a couple of my brothers come over, and they'll boil the chickens, get those ready to go, and then you have actually we used to have a noodle night, because when we started this thing, we made homemade noodles. So the evening. Now, okay, the 24th is the big celebration. So the 23rd was considered noodle night. And so they would make the noodles the day before. Now we don't make the noodles. We buy the noodles, but we still have a noodle night anyway. And one of my other brothers sponsors that, or he hosts that. All the kids get together. We have about the same number at his place the evening before, and then Christmas Eve, come on in. All the families get together, exchange gifts. We have a Bible reading, and we have to have 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. That's a big part of it.
Okay.
And the kids get together, and they'll form a chorus. The younger kids, grandkids, they get to help do it. One of my brothers helps to organize all that, Tim. He makes sure they're all coordinated, ready to go, and do a little chorus, do the Bible story, do the Luke story of Christmas, and then Santa Claus, and then opening of gifts, and then everybody just hangs around until midnight. So
it's
a good time.
That's wonderful.
So we appreciate you giving us so much time here. Maybe we can close this out with your thoughts on what people should keep in mind about what's important during the Christmas season.
There is truly a Christmas spirit.
Okay.
And it manifests itself in the way people treat each other and in looking out for what other people need. And I think that's the part that makes people feel better about themselves. So the Christmas spirit is real, and it is a matter of, as we've said, it brings all people together. For us, we see Jesus as a central part of this, and the fact that Jesus' mother, Mary, was a Jewish mother, and it brings that in. Hanukkah is a part of this. The celebrations that we have there. During the time that I was governor, we'd have Christmas decorations in the Capitol. Christmas trees are up, 100 of them or more, and we would allow a nativity scene. But we also allowed a spot for other faiths to bring in theirs. A menorah, brought that in to celebrate, that it brings people together. It is a spirit that is good for America, and it's good for the rest of the world as well. So for us, it's a matter of recognizing the good in other people, and the spirit of Christmas, I believe, is truly alive and well.
Thank you, Senator. That is a great reminder. And thank you for being the guest on today's The Elephant in the Room.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We are coming up on Christmas. If you'd like to get us anything, we'd really appreciate a subscription.
And a like.
To our podcast.
And a listen.
Yeah. While you're at it, as long as you're subscribing, go ahead and listen. The Elephant in the Room is brought to you by U.S. Senator John Barrasso from Wyoming. He is a real doctor. We're coming up on a year here of podcast, and thank you so much for allowing us to do this, Senator Barrasso. Arjun Modi is the executive producer. Carly Rapp is our show producer, and Rashad Smith is our technical director. Merry Christmas to all, Happy New Year, and until next time, this is The Elephant in the Room.